Starting, all attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good evening, Dr. Mark Murphy. How are you doing tonight?
Richard, I am fine, and a very good evening to you. How's the weather down there on hot Houston there?
You know, Texas is cooling off a little bit. It was only 95 today, you know. It was kind of had a cold front come in, so down from 103.
Oh, man.
So, you know, as I get older, that heat gets a little harder to take, I'll tell you.
Not as hard as snow, though, I can assure you that.
Well, what's going on tonight, man? What are we going to talk about?
Well, we were going to talk about some of the changes that have been forthcoming for us in the world in which we live. We're going to talk about Herbst appliances. That's kind of the focus. We'll lead into that a little bit with some other stuff, but we're really going to focus the conversation on Herbst tonight. Are they all created equal? And the answer, of course, would be an obvious no. There's some very significant differences that the new digital manufacturing, CAD/CAM, precision engineering is bringing to us. It gives us some distinct advantages. So I love stealing a title from, I'm sure you've seen that YouTube video, which shows you so many different things that have evolved in a very short period of time from a technology standpoint. So instead of, you know what happens, shift happens. And so this is a technological shift, a paradigm shift, if you will, from an artisanal manufacturing platform and process for us in dental sleep medicine to now what is really precision medical devices. And we're going to see more and more. You're hearing about them all the time. If you haven't, please, there's other webinars that will be coming to tell you about all the other companies that are starting the mill. And so really trying to get a precision design and a precision manufacturing and a CAD/CAM kind of process, that's all we'll know in just a few years.
Yeah, it's hard to believe that. You know, I'm going to have to check out that video. I don't know that I've actually seen that particular one on YouTube, but I will tell you that, you know, I haven't stopped at a gas station in quite some time because I drive an electric car for the last 3 years. So, you know, there's a lot of, and we talk a lot too, Mark, you know, and when we teach, get in front of dentists, I always talk a lot too about the paradigm shift of treating sleep and how it's different than dentistry, you know, so maybe we'll
so different.
Yeah, we'll talk about a couple of different paradigm shifts here as we go. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you have here. Thank you for putting these slides together for us.
Well, thank you. And you told me that we first had to start off with some really important housekeeping issues. So this is kind of the outline that we've got for tonight. The outline is pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. We're going to talk about why this is such an important topic. We'll talk about trends that are impacting this. We'll talk about what you and I have put together as some of the issues that are problems with Herbst devices that are out there, and then what some of the new precision engineering and manufacturing platforms are giving us as solutions. And from a disclaimer standpoint, I'm pretty sure everybody knows, if they don't, from my email address, I am the lead faculty for Prosomnus Sleep Technologies, and much like you work for Dental Sleep Solutions, which I'm a customer of and love the software, by the way. Do I get $5 for that plug, by the way? Do I get $5?
Yes, I'll give you $5 next time I see you.
Okay, I really do. I don't know how I get by without that software. It's just I've told you, Kimmy and I talked about it. I felt like it saved my life in January because we were getting buried in emails and communication. But so it's great stuff to have. But I lecture and teach for Prosomnus, so I'm going to have a slanted view, but I'm going to try and keep the conversation like you and I talked about on what engineering and precision and manufacturing and CAD/CAM can do. And it's right now that's mostly Prosomnus, but in 2 or 3 or 5 years, that's going to be how everybody makes every device. So let's jump into the housekeeping that we've got to take care of first. And I don't know where the housekeeping slide went. Heavens to Betsy. Let me fix that up.
Keep going. We're doing fine.
Sure.
You guys will get your CE and all that other stuff. You know, make sure that you check your spam folder if you don't get it. Give us a couple of days to get that to you. So
there we go.
You don't see it right away.
There we go. Your CE will indeed be sent to you. That is correct. So just so you know that that's coming, it's right there. Your CE certificate will be emailed. Check your email, and if you don't see it, check your spam and junk folder. Also, here's a plug. There's a very handsome guy up there on the top row in the corner, I understand. A lot of good-looking people coming. You're down there on the bottom. Another handsome guy. John Remmers is there, Aaron Elliott, Steve Carson's a good friend of mine, Jameson Spencer, Ryan's going to be there. So there's a lot of great folks coming. Eagles is coming. It's going to be a great conference. I'm sure that last year's was spectacular. I was really surprised, Richard. You guys did a great job of covering off topics that were knowledgeable and important for newbies who were just getting started in sleep, and yet kept me interested as well. So that was great. Thank you for that. Well done. I'm also
that's a lot of fun, especially, for you Yankees up there to come down, to Florida in February. It's usually a little bit nicer weather too. So
it's a struggle. It's a struggle for us to go down I-75. We've been going through the air now, but this year I've got a program 2 weeks later, so I think we're going to stay down there for those 2 weeks and hang out at Guy's house as much as we can. So there we go. All good. And then subscribe to Dental Sleep Insider. I get to write a little column in there periodically. You all are kind enough to let me do that. So it's fun. It's a great little publication, and you may want to say something about that.
That's free. We do a lot of stuff for free. Dental Sleep Solutions.
Pretty good.
The symposium as well as the Insider, what we always try to concentrate on is the practical, fundamental, yet everyday things that we do in our practices. I own half of Dental Sleep Solutions, but I make my living by doing this every day.
Right.
So we started 9 devices yesterday in my office, and we started 9 devices today when I left at noon. So those are 2 really good days for us, but we're seeing that more and more and more. And I'll kind of sprinkle through there some of the things that, we've done, Mark, because everybody's interested in doing more sleep, and as dentists,
absolutely,
we hear a lot, where do we find these patients? How do we do this? How do we do that? So that's just kind of my disclaimer for, those of you out here who've not seen my ugly mug before. I work real hard to get that sheen off my forehead, but they keep telling me it's not the lighting. But and again, we Mark and I both we know a lot about this because we made a lot of mistakes along the way. As we learn this, and when we talk tonight about the TAP and the HERBST, and we'll talk about the pros and cons of each and things like that, and then what's different from about the HERBST that Prosomnus is making now. And, we always say, Mark, that it's little adjustments make a big difference. We always talk about our dental devices being a race car. And, the old race cars, you used to remember the old Volkswagen. My wife, when I started dating her, had a Carmen Ghia, and we used to get back there and just put the screwdriver on the carburetor and just turn it till it sounded about right, But and that's kind of what we're doing, with these dental devices. We're kind of putting the screwdriver in there and just turning it till the volume goes down. But yeah, I'm interested to hear some of this stuff tonight.
All right. So the first thing that I kind of want to get us thinking about just a little bit when we talk about why Prosomnus solutions and discussion is, you and I have talked about this a little bit, Richard. There is a mega trend coming. Medicare growth is phenomenal. When we look at the estimated compound annual growth rate for oral appliance, sleep apnea market, that's really robust growth. And you see 8 to 10 to 12. Some studies will talk about, some financial studies will talk about even as high as 12.8, 13%, say. But when you look at the graph of what's happening with the Medicare population, the baby boomers coming of age, I'm 63, so I'm knocking on that door. There's going to be a huge increase in the impact that PDAC approval, Medicare types of devices have. And that's going to have a profound effect on the mix. Where maybe we might think today that that's 20% of the oral appliance therapy market that needs to be PDAC, even though maybe 50% of the devices that are being delivered in North America are HERBST devices. Only about 20%, not 50, are mandated by PDAC rules and regulations for Medicare. Then there's another subset that we'll talk about, that's AIM and Blue Cross and some of the other carriers that are using that. So that's a phenomenal trend that's making this a much more important piece of what we do.
Well, explain that to me a little bit more, Mark, because if I'm a new guy, you threw out a couple of acronyms there, PDAC and this and that. So,
yeah.
So tell me, about, in the big market. I understand in the big market, about half the appliances out there being prescribed are HERBST, but how does that relate to Medicare? specifically?
Yeah. Well, let me run through a couple slides that'll help show that. This one right here.
Okay.
So when we think about managed care, that's kind of a misnomer. It's really managed cost. When we think, now, I'm not saying that they aren't managing care sometimes. Sometimes they're making great decisions about care that improves the health and the outcomes, and that's fantastic stuff. But they're not doing it because it's purely better for the patient. They're doing it in a way that shapes it for being better for the patient, but at the same time saves the hospital, the insured, money. It's about saving money. It's about managing costs. We've seen it in dentistry with PPOs, HMOs. We've seen all these kinds of managed care programs. They're managed cost programs. We see the same thing here. And the reason this is so important is the PDAC guidelines are a series of rules and regulations where PDAC sets the tone for CMS, which is a government organization that oversees all of the Medicare rules and regulations, how you're going to treat patients, what you're going to do, how many days they stay in the hospital, what kind of appliances, when do they get CPAP, when do they get an oral appliance, how severe does it have to be, if it's mild, it has to have a comorbidity. There's all kinds of, really fine print and nitpicky stuff that's there in the Medicare regulations. And buried in that is this kind of language about what are the indications for an oral appliance. And also in there for Medicare and for PDAC guidelines, it says that the device has to have a metal connection between the upper and lower. It's got some fancy language about that, but basically most of the devices that are out there, there's 130, 140 different kinds of FDA approved devices. Most of those do not fit a metal hook or a metal rod or a metal part on the upper and the lower connecting together and holding the upper and lower together. So that's 20% of the world. Then many states, I think it's 11 states now, some of the insurance carriers like Blue Cross, they haven't done it in Michigan yet, thank goodness, but I know they've done it in Idaho, because that's here in Elliott. They've done it in some other places. A lot of carriers are saying, let's get a third party, and let's have the third party kind of review the rules and regulations for us as an insurance carrier as to how much we're going to pay and when we're going to pay, when we're going to cover this and when we're not, and how many days they get to stay in the hospital, and all that stuff that insurance companies have to worry about. And one little part over the corner is oral appliance therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is they say, well, let's not rethink this. Let's just steal the guidelines from PDAC and Medicare and use them for regular patients, because that would be easier than writing our own rules and regulations. Wow. Talk about bringing everything down to a lower level. That means that slowly some of the insurance companies in some states, and more to follow, will start to adopt Medicare PDAC guidelines for what kind of device they can use. So that means if I'm an IA user, which is an iterative advancement, or I like a dorsal, or I like a Panthera, I can't use that for a Medicare patient. Well, but I can use it for my other patient. Nope, you can't use it for this patient because they've got Blue Cross. I'm in Idaho, and in Idaho, they're using AIM to set the rules and regs, and they just grabbed off the shelf the Medicare regulations and applied those to that Blue Cross policy. So in some states, Blue Cross feels just like Medicare. And that's having an impact too on how many Herbst devices or how many TAPs, how many of these Medicare approved devices we're going to see.
Sure.
Does it make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
And do you see that trend like spilling over into most of the states when you look at controlling costs? I mean, we back up one slide or two to that megatrend thing. I'm not sure people understand and realize how many more patients that is for us. When you look at these Medicare patients, at least 50% of people 65 or older probably have sleep apnea, and it's again about the same 10% know they have it. You just look at that. As John Rimmer says, Mark, we're losing ground. We're not keeping up with the pace. We're diagnosing fewer people than are getting the disease every day, and we're treating even less.
That's the statement that we have to say over and over again. More people are coming upon this disease because of their aging or their size, their weight, etc. More are getting this disease than we are currently treating with CPAP and oral appliance combined. So we are actually losing ground to this particular disease. So talk about something that feels like an epidemic and maybe even pandemic if you think of the world. It's a travesty that this hasn't garnered more attention, especially when you think of the comorbidities. That's a whole different discussion, but it's huge. And this bump, this bubble that we're seeing in the population, the Medicare growth of my population segment showing up. I mean, look at that graph. Basically, over a 20-year period, you're darn near doubling the population of Medicare enrolled and eligible patients. That's huge. So
Yeah.
however many people have this, more are getting it, and more are going to need this type of device.
Yeah. So if you're a dentist out there, especially if you're a young dentist and you're thinking about getting into this, you know, hallelujah. You know, you were just born at the right time. So, you know, suck it up with the HMOs and BSOs and all that other stuff, and take the bull by the horns here and, you know, switch jobs. You know what I mean? We need
absolutely.
more dentists out there that are doing this. There just aren't enough dentists who know what they're doing to start to impact this. Now, we can point our finger and blame the physicians because they don't prescribe them enough, or, you know, things like that. But what's happening, I think, Mark, is all of these things are coming together right now, so that the timing is just right for us as dentists to get into this and to do this, because there's so much more awareness of the problem now, and we're lowering the barriers to getting paid, as well as, you know, well, look at this, you know, the ADA. How many dentists do you think even know that this came out 2 years ago?
When I've got a room with 80 or 100 people in it, there's a lot of people that are surprised that that's their responsibility today. You know, this resolution that came out, you know, it's pushing 2 years now, says we are responsible for screening. Just like perio, we don't have to treat, but we have to screen. We have to screen. We can't diagnose this particular condition, but we can screen, alert the patient, refer them. We don't have to treat them. But if 180,000 dentists, 150,000 GPs tomorrow all started screening, and half the population roughly goes to the dentist regularly, can you imagine the bump that would cause in the number of people seeking CPAP, oral appliance therapy, surgery, positional treatment, bariatric? I mean, all the different kinds of treatment modalities we have for obstructive sleep apnea. It would crush the system. It would crush the system. And so the AADSM, in their defense, they're trying to grow the number of diplomates, grow the number of qualified dentists. They've created that standard. So there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle that I feel good that they're moving in the right direction. Will they get there in time? Don't know. Will it be enough to thwart the growth of the disease? Don't know. We're seeing a shift in physicians. You and I have talked about this down in Clearwater last February. Tremendous shift in physicians accepting this therapy and looking towards oral appliance therapy as part of their solution, part of their regimen. So will that be enough? Don't know. But at least we're seeing some parts of the puzzle moving together, and I think that's important. But this is going to be huge. As big as it is now, it's still growing dramatically. And still reimbursements are good, but what we've seen with CPAP, what we've seen with pretty much any kind of procedure that starts to get highly utilized in medicine, they start to decrease the reimbursements. Physicians don't want to take out tonsils anymore. ENTs hate to take out tonsils. Not because they don't want to take out tonsils, not because they don't think it's good therapy, because they get $150 to $225 to put somebody under and take out tonsils. And the reimbursements go that low, nobody wants to do it. And sleep physicians are one of the lowest paid physician groups in medicine today. So the pressure on reimbursements is going to be tough. But, you know, we've probably got a 3, 5, 7, 8, maybe 10-year window where this is still growing, it's still super exciting before medicine beats us to death. That sounded pretty depressing, didn't it?
No, I mean, in some ways, you know, I mean, but the reality is, at some point, you know, I asked my staff this the other day. I said, you know, what day did I wake up and I lost my power as creating the standard of care, and the insurance companies got it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we have to play that game. And all I would tell you is get involved, you know, at a higher level, the AADSM, you know, contact your state, you know, representatives, your insurance people, all of this stuff. But we need more dentists to do this. You know, the ADA came out, and that's the first step. You know, I don't know if you remember, Mark, I'm almost as old as you. I know I look a little older, but I'm not, just for the record. But, you know, I remember this old guy in dental school. He told me, he said, you know, sometimes you have to take a little putty and put it on the back end of your mirror so you can stabilize that tooth while you cut the crown prep. You know, so when you talk about periodontal disease and things like that, you know, especially the young dentists that were like, holy cow, you know, I mean, it really used to be like that. Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
And I think we'll look back on this 20 years from now and we'll talk about sleep apnea the same way. I really do. You know, but they'll go, you mean dentists didn't even screen for this in their practice? Are you kidding me? You know, so we're all about trying to encourage you as dentists to get involved in this and do this, because you can make money doing it. You can make a living doing it. You can help a lot of people. It's very meaningful work. It makes you feel really good about getting up every morning.
I totally agree. So let's start the conversation about Herbsts by taking these PDAC, these Medicare guidelines, putting them in perspective. On the one side of the screen you see a Herbst Dream Tap, and on the other side a Herbst. And these are the two. There's a couple other variations that are plays on these. There's several different kinds of Herbsts, but the first appliance that I ever made, Richard, you know, was probably almost 30 years ago now. It was about 29 years ago, teaching with Keith Thornton down at the Pankey Institute. He taught me how to make some of the first early tap devices. They look like upper impression tray handles sticking down onto a lower platform that was flat, and the patient had to advance their mandible so they could close that upper handle down behind the flat plane. We didn't titrate. We weren't doing sleep studies, but we knew that we were helping them with their snoring, and they were probably breathing better and getting more rest at night. We were using that sometimes with fibromyalgia patients and treating them as well. So you have so much more experience in this, because I went quiet for a number of years and sleep treatment. But so Herbst tap, we're going to talk about Herbst tonight, but why are we going to talk about Herbst and why aren't we going to talk about tap tonight?
Well, mostly because we got you on board here, and you're, you know, you guys have been, you know, instrumental in making this move towards these very precision devices. You know, just like you said, I think you kind of summed it up there when you said, man, we used to just take a glob of something and put it in their mouth and move their jaw forward a little bit. It was better. It was better than nothing, you know. But we're kind of coming around, you know, again to, hey, let's do this. And, you know, being from Texas, I learned our first 5 courses I took were from Keith Thornton, and all I did was make taps. You know, that's all I did. I didn't know there was any other device, you know, because Keith wouldn't tell me there was any other ones, you know, as he was teaching me how to do this. And I have made a couple thousand taps over the years, and but, you know, really we're talking about taps and Herbsts because those are really our only choices when it comes to Medicare appliances right now. Now, Medicare will likely change some of that, you know, at some point with which device, because it's not really fair, I don't think, because some of the other devices do work very well. But, you know, we're having that decision now because, you know, every day when somebody's 65, one of the questions we had there, Mark, was, what do you do for a patient who has a metal allergy? You know, that's Medicare. You know, I just document what we do, and I make them one of the IAs.
I would too.
Yeah, and I say, hey, if somebody wants to sue me or they want to do that, I'm happy to go to court and fight for this patient and all the other stuff. But these are the choices that we have, and I don't know. You want me to talk about when I do one or the other right now, or you want to do that later? Or?
Yeah, let's save that. Let's save that for you. And let's jump into the Herbsts, because I'm seeing a couple of comments that are saying, you know, let's get into the Herbst stuff. So let's do that. So this is a list. You know, you and I have laughed about this a couple times. This is a list of all the Medicare approved devices. There's probably a couple, 3 more since I copied this off, but there's so many different versions by so many different companies. But these are the Herbst and or tap devices that you can use for a Medicare patient or an AIM patient who is where AIM is administering the guidelines for another carrier, another insurance company, like what do you call it?
Blue Cross and Idaho, whatever.
Yeah, Blue Cross and Idaho in some of the states. So it's pretty significant. So are these all the same? There, you know, there's a section here in this area right here. They're all taps. So many of the others are Herbst taps. License the manufacturer of taps out to other dental laboratories. So there might be 40 or 50 labs that make taps. That's fine. But there are so many different Herbsts out there. Are they all the same? And that's really where the question comes up. So if we're going to talk about Herbsts, let's kind of go down a list of some of the things that you and I put together that concern us or maybe are less than ideal when it comes to Herbst design and Herbst utilization and what the Herbst has as an advantage. And certainly one of the, and it's funny, if I go back, I'm going to go back 2 slides for a second. When we look at this area down here, that bites into the tongue space. And anything that bites into this tongue space for me is really a contraindication. I'm not trying to beat up on the tap, but all of the taps have some kind of device down here that really impinges on the tongue space. And the whole idea we have is advancing the tongue, advancing the mandible, letting the tongue come forward. And so any appliance that is larger or bulkier to me can be problematic. And we had to make them large and bulky because all we had was cold cure acrylic. Then we had hot pot acrylic. And the mechanisms we had, the attachments we had, took up time and space, and those had to be embedded in acrylic. So size was a big deal. And trying to get these devices smaller is a real advantage.
Yeah, I like, I talk about, one of my old taps that I have sitting there on the table was an old tap 1, had the thing sticking out your mouth that you adjusted.
Oh.
And it was this tremendous gob of thermacryl on there and everything. And I thought, one of these days I'm going to melt it down and I'm gonna make it into a little ball or a square. And I'm going to do the same thing with your precision Herbst. And it's like the difference between a tennis ball and a golf ball, and you think all of that's going in my mouth, so you have to think that smaller, more precise is certainly better. It makes more sense. I always say, whatever's in there that's occupying space that otherwise soft tissue or air could be moving through is getting in the way. But that's certainly something, the bulk and the irritation. And you tell us about biogunk. I know you're the expert, but what is that?
Yeah. So I'm gonna throw back your comment. You don't have to bother melting those down. We can actually submerge them in water, and the amount of water they displace can be measured. And so we've measured a lot of different Herbst devices against this milled appliance. And when we can mill the plastic, the acrylic, the PMMA, we can make it smaller and it's still strong. And so it takes up significantly less volume. It displaces significantly less volume of water when you submerge it. So we can actually measure the displacement volume and indirectly do exactly what you're talking about, melting it down. And the good news is the Prosomnus or any mill device is going to be significantly smaller than anything else we have out there. Jumping to the biogunk, and then we'll come back to screw irritation. So I'm a fan of milled PMMA over any other material, because when we look under a electron micrograph, it looks pretty porous. It doesn't look great, but it looks way better than cold cure acrylic. And that looks way better than nylon that's been printed. Nylon printed is the most porous material we can see. Cold cure acrylic is extremely porous. But when we start to look, and you can look up all the studies on denture-based materials that have now been milled, they just do not grow the same amount of biogunk, bioburden, bacteria and germs. And we know that that's associated with cardiovascular health, health of the device, taste of the device, flavor, smell, staining of the device. We did an interesting study that we published in one of the journals where we did a very super scientific study. So different materials, milled PMMA, cold cured PMMA, soft liner, and nylon. And we soaked them all in a very scientific material called mustard. And in mustard, after 30 days, the milled CAD/CAM device, our Prosomnus device, but think of any mill material, is going to look pretty good. Really didn't show any tinting, discoloration. It looks fantastic. But all of the other variants, after just 3 to 5 to 6 days, have taken up so much of the stain. So this idea of the porosity of the material and how it grows bacteria and germs and how it takes on so much more staining, discoloration, and taste, that's a real problem. As well as delamination of some of those soft materials. That's an issue.
Well, it does happen, and I know the labs where I make those devices, they hate to see my devices come back under warranty, because we do see that. I'm kind of wondering if, because of that biogunk issue, your pets will be less likely to chew that device up because it will smell less like you. You never thought about that, did you?
I'm gonna say that we haven't quite seen a reduction. I wish I could tell you, but I'm not gonna lie to you. We have not seen a reduction in pet chewing complaints. Pets love saliva, goopy stuff on plastic. I don't know why. I can't tell you.
Oh, I know.
Steve Carstensen gave me a great tip. I now ask all my patients, "Do you have pets?" And they say, "Yeah, I do." "Do you have a dog?" And they go, "Yeah." I go, "Well, add this to your homeowner's policy." And they go, "What?" I go, "It's $10 to $20 a year. It's not very expensive at all, and they'll pay for the complete replacement if your dog chews this up." And they think to themselves about how the dog chews up other things. They go, "That's a good idea." Carstensen gave me that idea, and it's wonderful. So
there you go. There's your tip for the night right there. And we do that. I will tell you, the biggest complaint I get, Mark, just day in and day out from the herbs that we've been using is the irritation of that front screw. If it happens to be right at the commissure, of their lip. When we put that device in and it catches every single time, we all look at each other and kind of cringe and go, "Oh, that's going to be another one of those." Some people that got lips, you can, wrap around their ear and get them out of the way and things like that. But I would say that's probably the number one complaint that we hear in my office every day.
So, at Prosomnus, their design process, and I'm sure lots of other companies try to do something like this, but their design process is we bring in a bunch of doctors, and you know what we do. We bring them in, we have them come by, we put them up for a couple of days somewhere nice, we feed them, we drink with them a little bit, but mostly we feed them and we pick their brains for 2 days. And when we do that, we say, "What do you like? What don't you like?" And we try to take in that information, and then that goes to engineering. And Sung and his team take that information, and Dave Coons, and they put together some profiles of how they would design something that doesn't have those same problems. And sometimes they can't solve those. Sometimes they can. And with this particular one, if I can jump ahead a couple slides just to have a little bit of fun with this, this is what they did. They developed these two little. These are mills, so these are part of the single platform. These two little mill protective bumps, little comfort bumps we call them, and they extend up and they're rounded on the edge so that your lip doesn't catch on anything, but they stick out just a tiny bit farther. Can you see that in the screw? It's a really flat, low profile screw. So the width of this is still less than the width of the other Herbst devices, but now it's got this little shield that wraps around and keeps the commissure off. It's probably way more important for this anterior screw than it is for the posterior screw. Posterior screw, you're up there with your operculum, stuff like that. I don't hear many complaints about that screw. This is where I hear all the complaints, is down here in front. So that kind of a design characteristic, being able to be designed and milled into the acrylic, that's significant because that protects that cheek and deflects that cheek away so that it doesn't get caught in that area. Much like the buccal profile of your upper molars deflects your cheek away and the soft tissue mucosa so it doesn't get caught and you bite in between your upper and lower teeth. When you make some temporary, sometimes you're in a hurry and you don't have that same sort of deflection corridor, the deflection convexity, you'll sometimes have people come back and say, "I've been biting my cheek ever since you made me those temporaries." And that's what's happening along that line, that linea albiformis, because they're biting their cheek because there isn't that little bulk to push it away. And so that's what that's in there for. So thanks for asking about that. That's been a really good design feature.
Well, then I will tell you that's one of those things that falls under little adjustments make a big difference. Like I talked about before, with the carburetor or the race car or something like that. Unless you have done a whole bunch of these, you don't realize that little thing at the corner of their mouth sometimes is the reason that patient won't wear the dental device.
Yeah, you're right.
And they won't wear CPAP, and they have severe sleep apnea, and they die of a heart attack a year later. I take that personally in my practice when things like that happen, and I get my staff to take that personally. So we've been doing all kinds of things like this, for a while, but we're very happy that you are actually doing this now. I will tell you that about half the time, Mark, we're cutting the back one off, or we're remodeling that particular one. But I'd much rather have it there, and use it than not have anything there at all. So I
totally get that.
I think, the biogunk and the screw irritation are two really big ones, but, as you break these things down, every one of these is actually important, as we go through this. So we got to keep moving.
And some of them are easier to conjure up and think about the kind of improvements they were and not as big a deal. But the next one for me that I thought was kind of important, because getting the orientation, putting a big blue arrow, that's kind of easy. But the retention screw slippage, I've had so much slippage when I have that little pinhole and I'm turning that, and I get everything adjusted, and the patient goes home, and they're going to adjust it some more. They'll come back, one side's slid all the way back, the other side's not. Now they're asymmetrical. It drives me nuts, and I get a lot of that. So the folks at one of the parts manufacturers that make the little Herbst tubes and everything like that they could use, developed some, they told us all about it, but it's some sort of nanotechnology, some material that's in there, that if they have it in a nut instead of just that little screw, the bulk of the material prevents slippage. 100%? Probably not. I'm sure there's still going to be some cases of slippage, but so far, knock on wood, I haven't had any slippage of any of the devices. So this nanotechnology of some sort of a polymer that's in there prevents that nut with the larger volume and everything from slipping. So that's why we really went to that nut instead of just that little tiny screw hole. And that's been helpful for us too, is we're not seeing the kind of slippage and the asymmetry that we saw before. And that means that you get to use a wrench. But, you know, again, Prosomnus trying to listen. They developed the nut, nanotechnology, wrench, everything like that. First thing they got hammered on is that wrench is too hard to use. So the wrench that they first produced with the new pH, the Precision Herbst, was very, very narrow, and they immediately got feedback that sucked. It needed to be thicker. So they produced a whole nother generation of little teeny wrenches that are now like 1.5 or 2.5 times the thickness. I don't even know. But now they latch onto that, and just like any other wrench would, they latch on a lot easier, and it's a lot easier to use. So they're responding all the time to that kind of information. So that's good.
That's good to know. And you got to remember, you know, some of the people, you know, I don't know what percent mark, but, you know, we get some of these little old ladies and they're like, you put the key in the hole? What hole? What hole? You know, they can't even tell that there's a hole there. So, you know, this is still a little bit small, but it's absolutely, again, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You know, we want these devices to be small, and we just do our best. You know, make a video. Here's another great tip for you guys. Okay, make a quick little video of how to do that and put it on your website.
We actually have already shot it. So thank you for suggesting that. We already shot that, and they're actually in editing right now. They're being edited.
Well, I'm talking about all the other dentists out there, you know, who are doing this, because it'll save you some trouble, you know, because your patients do come back and. But
I wish I could tell you that those little ladies could still adjust the screw. They don't. I think part of it is they need to go visit a friend and come in and see us, and that's why you and I both have great team members who can handle those kinds of conversations and handle those patients when they come in. So it's all good stuff. So this next slide is simply some of the things that I don't want to just brag about Prosomnus, but it is Prosomnus because they're the only ones that are really milling in this precision engineered environment right now. There's some other people that are, you know, using CAD and milling, but it isn't necessarily the same level of precision engineering. But precision engineering is going to give a lot of different people, a lot of different manufacturers, a lot of different companies the ability to do these kinds of things. Smaller profile, smaller size, you know, milling in these comfort bumps, having a material that's, honestly, PMMA is still pretty porous looking when you look at it under an electron micrograph, but it's much less porous than cold cure. And I think in 3 to 5 years, there's going to be some new material out there that's much more biocompatible, you know, accumulates less biogun, and we probably won't even be using PMMA. We'll be milling something else or printing something else. But, you know, making one screw gold so that we can see it better, putting a blue arrow, that's easy stuff. Wrenching the nut, that's easy stuff. 5-year warranty, I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. I think it was interesting when they did the breakage testing. You know how all these companies, when you go to do all your testing for FDA approval, you have to do these breakage tests. Well, because it's milled and it's so strong, it turns out the breakage was not between the acrylic and the Herbst arm. It was the Herbst arm bent. And so we get these series of non-catastrophic failures where under extreme pressure, instead of the device breaking like you normally would expect and see, the arm bent. So with that knowledge, Prosomnus put together a little kit where you can actually, if somebody steps on it, if somebody can torque it so hard in their mouth, a really super heavy Bruxer, you could actually unscrew that arm and screw another arm right back on. So that whole warranty thing, it's easy to offer a 5-year warranty when really, you know, the most likely part to break is going to be that. And then if you do need to go longer, there's a longer arm in there, or you could order up another arch that has the replacement screw receptacle in different spots. so you can go forward another. So it's really kind of an unlimited advancement capability, which is similar to what they've got for their iterative advancement. It's really kind of nice. Some good stuff.
That's very nice. Yeah, I didn't know about the bending tool. And
Yeah.
I think inherently, Mark, it's just difficult to adjust a Herbst. You put the
Even
little
these,
key in
Richard,
the
even these, like it's a wrench, but it's not fun.
I know. So make a video, have good staff, bring a friend, do whatever you have to do to get around some of this stuff. But I think you guys have certainly put together a wonderful device there, and
Thanks.
all good stuff.
It's been a lot of hard work, and it was good for me because I kept teasing them because here I was using IA a lot, but every time I had to have a Medicare patient, I would use somebody else's Herbst, and I really was not terribly happy or enamored with any of them. And I tried a lot of different Herbsts out there, and they all work just fine. And they're all good appliances, but it was fun to have them come out with this because don't get me wrong, you got to use a Herbst and you got to use one, but I would probably not use one if it weren't mandated by some of the guidelines. But at least the platform is good. And so with the platform, I feel comfortable that I've got a better material, I got less file gunk, I'm not going to have tooth movement, that kind of stuff. But other than that, it's still a Herbst for sure. This is a good picture of some of the things, and you mentioned a couple of these things when you talked about the tongue space, the less volume. On average, it's on average. There was about 18%. That's quite a bit. It's maybe not tennis ball and golf ball, like you said. I wish it was that big, but it's maybe softball and baseball, or maybe, I don't know, tennis ball and ping pong ball. I'm not sure, whatever's 20% less, but 18% less. Some were 35, some were 6 or 7% less. But the amount of acrylic and Herbst arm and everything else displaced a certain volume of water. We also measured widths from inside here to outside here, inside and outside here, and it was very interesting how ginormous some of the devices are. And you think about cold cure acrylic being made by hand in a lab, you're going to slap that crap on. And here, the engineers, really work with some very specific design specifications that tell them exactly how much material they've got room for. It's really kind of neat.
Yeah, that's not near as dramatic. Putting it in water and seeing how much it displaces is not near as dramatic as getting a torch out and just torching those things. It makes much more of an impression. I will tell you that the new tap, they've come out with the AccuTherm, and I just, I love the tap, and I still use it a lot. And we're not here to bash the tap in any form or fashion, but that AccuTherm is quite a bit smaller. So, and it does make a difference, So, but the point being that, less volume, but still maintaining strength, and we're making it as we're putting things in there to make it more comfortable. Again, the screw stripping and the device being uneven when the patient comes back, and the irritation from the bumps is probably the top two things that my practice deals with on a daily basis. But we're making a whole bunch of these now in my office. And, we're taking scans and a bite, and we click a button, and the next thing you know, man, we've got this device here, and we go, here, try this in. And they go, oh, it's great. And I mean, a lot of times, this takes like 3 or 4 minutes. That's all it takes, and the patients.
They see pretty quick. They do.
So I love it. So the gold screw is the one on the top. You've got the arrow there.
Yeah, it's just a way for the patient to be able to orient the upper and the lower. And then they've got the blue arrows. On one side it points up, and on one side it points down, telling them which way to turn the screw. And I write all that out for them in their titration guidelines when I send them home, and they still screw it up. So that's why, when you were saying the little old lady can't put the pin in, or an older person struggles with the pin, they still struggle with the wrench. Maybe they struggle a little bit less, but they still struggle. It's doing those kinds of things. This population has certain challenges with these kinds of adjustments and things that you're going to expect of them. Where I might send another patient home with a pulse oximeter and a titration schedule for the next 2 weeks, and then drop this back off. 5 days at the bite, 5 days at 1 millimeter, 5 days at 2, and drop off the pulse oximeter. I almost would never do that with an older patient, because it's just going to be more confusing for them. So try and keep it as simple as I can. No question about it.
I like that. You know, keep it as simple as you can. I think we all have something to
Yeah.
learn from that. And, you know, I've been kind of looking through these questions. One thing that Dr. Mason pointed out earlier, Mark, was that the aim did not necessarily go with the 5-year replacement, you know, thank goodness.
That's correct. Good point. Good point. Yeah, and sometimes they'll, and you don't necessarily, if the language is correct, it'll say a device that meets PDAC guidelines doesn't necessarily have to be PDAC approved. And so some devices that are designed that meet the guidelines but haven't gone through the Medicare PDAC approval process may still be applicable, but they're going to be similar to these devices. They just maybe haven't met their approval yet, that kind of thing. But so yeah, that's a good point. Thank Erica for that. She's on top of that stuff.
Yeah, and we use elastics quite a bit. You know, one of the things that we always talk about for increasing, I think, effectiveness is keeping them out. You know, all we really have control over, Mark, is the vertical and the protrusive. You know, when you think about it, we can make the device as small, as comfortable as we can, and then you know, if it's in and you know, I'm still over there like that. You know, I always tell patients, you know, without anything in there, your jaw drops down and back. With the device in and forward, even though it moves, we're still not where we were without anything at all in there. So I want you to try to use these elastics, you know. And the biggest challenge with elastics for us has always been retention. You know, once I put a rubber band in there and the patient wants to yawn or they open a little bit, well, whichever one is a little more loose will pop off.
Sure.
And we have some control over that in the design. So tell us real quickly, when we're writing a script for this, what might we say if we're concerned about that?
Yeah, you can ask for more retention. You can ask for less retention. Generally speaking, when you look at the teeth, if they're short and they don't look like they have a lot of inherent retention or a lot of lingual inflammation in the posterior, because most of the retention comes from the bicuspid of the molars. It's a passive fit in the anterior, very accurate fit, so you don't get any tooth movement. But the retentive part is usually in the posterior. By allowing the technician more of a lingual paddle instead of a fully lingualist design, let them be lingualist in the anterior and allow some lingual material in the posterior, they're able to develop a little bit more retention. So getting more retention usually is not a problem with these mill devices. They usually fit very well and have a lot of retention. Just the opposite. Sometimes they'll come back, they'll fit a little tight for me, and I call it, I dust right on the intaglio surface up by the cervical and the posteriors, and that usually takes care of it. It's too tight. I can always get them in when I deliver them, but sometimes the patient can't get them out. And so, you know, there's this balance between how tight you want the fit and how loose. Elastics are great. I do use them, but I love trying to get patients to tape. And I tape almost every night. And so taping my mouth shut accomplishes the same thing as the elastics would do. Plus, it really gives me better lip competency, keeping my lips together. A lot of patients who have the same arch size discrepancy problems, we're going to have the same difficulty with lip competency. So for me, taping would be great, but I just can't get very many patients to do it. So the elastics are a good way to go, no doubt.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know what Mark is talking about, we really are talking about taping your mouth shut. You know, I mean, there's a couple of different things, you know, that you can use for that. Yeah, the tap even comes with a obturator that you can put inside. Different things you can do because we want to encourage nasal breathing as much as we can. Here's a question for you, Mark. What if I get one back and I want to use elastics and it's kind of loose? Let's say the top is coming off a little bit. Maybe it's my fault because I didn't say, hey, I want max retention. But what can I do?
I would reline it. I made, I don't know, I always want to say thousands of bite points over the years. Probably closing people's airways. That's another discussion we could have. But I was probably killing most of my patients, but I had good intentions at the time. You know, you can't open the VOD, right, unless you advance the mandible, otherwise the rotation closes. You know, you get the idea. So I'm a very quick reliner. I roughen the intaglio surface only in the molars and the bicuspids, and then I paint monomer. I clean it all off, dry it, and I paint monomer on there. And then I mix a little slurry. We've got a video on this online too. Then we mix a little slurry and we pour it in there, not too much, just a tiny, tiny bit, and then you let it lose its gloss. Once it's got loss of gloss, lubricate the teeth with Vaseline or something similar. Seat the device. Wait the exact amount of time. I don't know what that is. We just kind of guess. You tease off one side, put it back in. Tease off one side, put it back in. Tease off one side, put it back in. Then take the whole thing off and throw it in really super hot water, and you'll have a great snap fit. So if I get one that's a little too loose, if I make it a little too loose usually, because I almost always come plenty tight, but if I get one that's a little bit too loose, I just reline it real quick. Sometimes I just reline one side, and that works great. You can also reline because it's acrylic, so if they have a crown down or something, you can grind out that tooth. And if you really think you want to go back and get retention on that tooth, you can reline that as well.
And what material are you using?
Oh, thanks. I use caulk ortho acrylic because it's got better dimensional stability than some of the other PMMAs and polyethylene methacrylates, PMOs that you got. It's still terrible. It still warps a lot, but not as much as some of the Vistacryls do or anything like that. So caulk ortho acrylic, you could use Lucitone. You know, you could use jet, but it'd be tooth coated if they had a clear. You know, some clear acrylic material like caulk ortho acrylic works real well.
Yeah, and we've got a few comments from, you know, different people across the country, you know, about these types of things, and we've hit on most of this kind of stuff tonight. But I think the thing I really want to say, Mark, is that little adjustments make a big difference. You know, I preach that to my staff and my patients all day, every day, and you know, when we look at some of the things you guys have done with this, just with the screw not backing up as much and the comfort bumps, and you know, they're milled and the bio gunk and all this other kind of stuff, you know, you're kind of raising the bar for everybody else, and that's why other people are starting to come out with milled devices and all that other stuff. Like you said, 5 years from now, they'll probably be the only one. But
yeah, I thank you for that comment. And you know, it's funny because I get the I'm a dentist like you, and I only do sleep like you, and that's all we do. And I don't do it as much as you. I didn't start 9. I'm going to deliver, I think, 4 cases tomorrow and start 3 or 4 more. So that'll be good. I'll have a nice Wednesday. But the world in which we live has given us great opportunities to help people with these problems. But the materials we've used, the techniques we've used, kind of remind me of amalgam or ZOE denture impressions. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. Polysulfides for crown and bridge. There's these old materials we used to use, or belt-driven handpieces where you'd watch the little rabbit go around. All that stuff, you are almost as old as me if you remember that. So all that stuff, it works great. It works great. But nobody would use that today because today there's better material out there. How we move teeth today with Invisalign, you're seeing so many less brackets. How we do everything, how we talk on one of these phones is incredible compared to how we talked before. I remember getting a long cord where I could take the telephone from the kitchen around the corner and sit in the living room on this monstrously long cord that was always getting tangled up and talk to my now wife when I was in high school on the phone and have it be a little bit more of a private conversation. And that was a big deal, mobility of that phone. Now, calling these things a phone is incredible. Same thing here. This is happening very quickly. Prosomnus was really smart. They've got a great team of people. You know, they were born from Microdental Laboratory, and the CEO is a guy named Lynn Liptak, and I know you know him quite well, but Lynn's this great guy, came from 3M, and he brought some engineers with him, and these engineers and some other folks, and thank goodness they asked my help at the time, and some other dentists that were very caring, and a lot of people pitched in and told them what we thought would be better, and these engineers came back with ideas that we had not seen before because they lived outside of traditional dentistry, and they brought ideas from outside into what we were trying to do in sleep. And so they would not think about co-cure. They were milling or printing and trying to find the right materials. So it was just so fun to watch that stuff evolve. And that was 2013, 2014. They got their FDA approval. So it's only 5 years. It's only 5 years of these precision mill devices. And in 5 years, there'll be 10 or 20 of them on the market. You're going to see that for sure.
Yeah. Do me a favor, back up a slide there. I want to talk real quickly, just 30 seconds, you know, back up one more even. You know, those of you who don't know who Dental Sleep Solutions is, you know, that's
Oh yeah, that's a good point.
what we do is we help dentists do this. You know, we call them the 4 pillars: education, coaching, software, and support. And that's how we help you do this. So look us up online. We're happy to help you do free consultations, you know, see what you're doing in your sleep practice, see if there's a fit for what we do and how you guys do it. And absolutely a couple of docs on there, Mark, we're talking about, hey, can I get one made for me and stuff like that. I would tell you to reach out personally to Prosomnus. I know they're great people. Yep. They're here to help you help your patients. You know, there's no doubt about that.
You can even email me. My email's right there. You can email me and I'll connect you with the right salesperson or service person and get one of these made for you. That's what I've done so that I've got, you do too, I know, you and I have talked about this. I've got one of every kind of device imaginable. And those are what I use as some of my demo models. I've got 3 different locations I work out of. So for me, it's a challenge having enough demo models in all these locations. But this way I can show them an IA, I can show them a pH, I can show them a dorsal, I can show them all kinds of different devices. I can show them a printed device that's nylon, like a Panthera, and because there's times when I've got to use that. And so there's different devices, different, you know, horses for different courses, so to speak. And the folks at Prosomnus, you know, I think they like what I do, but they know I'm going to always be honest. And I can't always use one of our devices. I usually can now because we've got a pretty full portfolio. You know, we've got a dorsal, we've got this iterative advancement. Now we've got a precision Herbsts. That's kind of cool. We're going to come out with a lower profile, kind of smaller, even continuous advancement or dorsal than what you've seen before. That's going to be kind of cool. So it's fun to sit in those meetings and watch that stuff evolve. So it's pretty cool.
I'll bet it is, and that's what makes you real, Mark. You know, we know that you're getting paid by Prosomnus, but you still make other devices and things like that, and I think that's true of us at Dental Sleep Solutions as well, because you know we like our friends and we like the people who support us and we support them, but we're still out there trying to help you as dentists help your patients. So, Mark,
well, Richard, I'm gonna say something nice about you then, because you and I were friends, and Guy and I were friends for a long time before I ever came over and started using your software. And it wasn't even me who made the decision. My daughter, who runs my whole sleep practice, she went out and she interviewed all the different software companies. She did the demos with everybody, and she said, "This is the one." And I've told you this story many times, and I've said this, and I'll say it till my lips bleed. But man, we were about to shoot ourselves in the head with how hard it was to keep track of this stuff. And that software, I mean, it just makes it dumb easy. Now, if you were going to charge me $3,000 or $4,000 a month, maybe I'd bitch. But man, it's pretty cheap. It is real cheap. So thank you very much for that. It's awesome.
Well, we appreciate that. Couple of questions about mouth tape. So Somnifix is one. K-tape is another one that Dr. Bausis talked about. I don't know that I can think of any other. There are a couple others. You just get online and look at mouth tape and that kind of thing. And
I'll tell you what I use. I use 3M Micropore.
There you go. That's the one I was trying to think
tape. And my wife orders it, and she gets these 4 or 5. I don't know how many come in a package. Bulk rolls from them on Amazon Prime. We get it from Amazon Prime. And they come in 1-inch squares. They're perforated. I can run upstairs and grab it for you. They come in. And I take off 2. I could probably get by with 1, but I feel like I cheat out the corners a little bit, and I just rather have the 2. And so what's really great is when I put this white piece of tape across like this, and I haven't kissed my wife goodnight yet, and I've never missed a night of kissing her goodnight when I'm home, because I'm like, and I got this white tape, and she's just like, get away from me. So it's a fun thing, really. She's not listening right now. I think my daughter's online right now. She's going creepy.
Yeah, she's like, Dad, stop right there. Stop right there. Don't take that one any farther. Okay.
3M Micropore. And you can buy that at Walgreens or any drugstores.
Couple other questions, Mark, about, I'm going to, do some work on this patient, 3 or 4 crowns or something like that. How do we transition through that? How do you want to answer that?
So if it's simple, like 1 crown here, 1 crown here, I would grind that area out of the acrylic, and then I would reline it if I needed to. I might not reline it if I didn't need to.
After the crown was done, right?
Yeah, and to accommodate the temporary. There was a great article that Tony Suelo wrote in the last journal, talking about how you could custom make that area in there. It's really sweet, very, very good. But one way of doing it is if the patient should happen to break that arch, you could have a new one made because it'd be covered under warranty. You didn't hear that from me. Did you hear that from me? You didn't hear that from me, did you? But the only problem is you'd want to take a new impression. And of course, if you're working with a digital company like this, you'd say, oh, my patient broke the thing and we need a new one. They'd say, no problem. They press a button, they print you a new one, they mail you another one, and it comes right out. But if you wanted to take a new impression, but honestly, the cost of an arch is so minimal that I'd build that into a fee for a crown. I think it's, I want to say it's $125. So if I was doing a $1,400, $1,500 on a crown, I'd tell them, and we're going to need to remake your thing, and that's going to be an extra. And you know the arch position, so if it was an IA and you had them at 2 millimeters, and you were using a lower 0 upper 2, and I was doing a couple crowns on the upper, I would just order a new upper 2. I'd say I'm going to take a new impression, and they could just take that one impression, mate it with the other, and make everything happen for $125. But otherwise, just reline that.
Yeah, and if you're starting with a good-looking tooth to start with, you know, you can always scan it and say, hey, make the crown just like this, so we don't have to mess with that at all, anything, you know. So,
good point.
You know,
very good point.
Use your brain, you know, whatever tools you have there and however technologically advanced your practice is. You know, some of you guys probably know more about that than I do because you're my wife the other day chipped her front tooth, Mark, and when she came in, I've got my new trifocals and I kept going, where? I don't see it. She said, you wouldn't be offended if that other dentist did the filling, would you? I said, no, not at all. She's so sweet. So there we have it.
I'm just looking through some of the questions, see if there's any other ones that we got to pop up.
Okay.
Good, very good.
Well, that was good. I think, Mark, you know, one of the things I want to drive home again, especially, is this mega trend in Medicare. I don't think that most of us realize how big a deal that's going to be.
Huge.
You know, we just, you know, 20 years ago when I decided I was going to sell my dental practice and start doing only sleep, I got some pretty funny looks from people. You know, you're going to do what? You know, like, are you, you know, one of my favorite lines in a movie is, who's the guy in Pulp Fiction, the black guy? Anyway, drawing a blank. Samuel Jackson. He says, have you lost your damn mind? You know, but, you know, people looked at me like that. And now I'm like, you know, I'm a really smart guy, you know, that did this. Part of that was fortune and part of that was good luck. But I think, too, that when you look at the next 10 to 20 to 30 years, we as dentists, we will gather more market share. And the market is growing. So there's plenty of this out there for a lot of us to do. You know, Dr. Saul talked about what can we do, you know, in organized dentistry to try to affect some change in this. Do you want to take a crack at that one?
Yeah, I think Eddie's great. Eddie Saul's a physician. He's a dentist. He's an MBA from Harvard. He's ridiculously smart. He and I are good friends. He and I are going to be teaching together this fall. We're doing a course at the University of Detroit here in Michigan. Dentistry's job, dentistry's role is to figure out a manageable pathway for diagnosis that as telemedicine, because there are people in rural areas where it's not easy to get to a sleep physician or sleep clinic. Also, there are dental practices that would like to be able to move a little faster than sometimes working with a local sleep physician in that cycle. So that telemedicine allows a little bit more of a face-to-face. It fulfills perhaps Medicare guidelines, things like that, with the physician ordering a sleep test. So we have to find efficiency and effectiveness. I think that's what Eddie would challenge us with, is efficiency and effectiveness. And I can't dawdle around with this. I can't say I'm going to do 2 devices a day and I'm going to call myself a sleep dentist. No, you're doing 9 devices a day. That's wicked. But if I'm still a general dentist, and I'm not, but if I was still a general dentist doing dentistry, I've got a couple thousand patients in my practice. And I know that 20 to 25% of them have obstructive sleep apnea, and 90% of those haven't been diagnosed. I have 440 patients in need of treatment without looking anywhere outside of my practice. And so how do we create efficiency and effectiveness inside that? And honestly, another plug to you, sorry, it's going to be your good day. I need a partner because I don't know how to do soap notes. I don't know how to do all these communications and faxes with the physicians that they want. I don't know how to order the sleep test. I don't know how to do all this medical billing. You pull your hair out. So I've got to pay somebody to come in and be this like part-time employee, and that's what DS3 is for us. You do all that kind of stuff. So I need to create efficiency and effectiveness in treating obstructive sleep apnea. Otherwise, we're going to continue to lose ground. And that's dentistry's role.
Thank you again for that plug. We do appreciate that. And I do believe that, you know, in some ways, in order for us to maintain our, you know, profitability in doing this, we're going to have to learn to be. No, and I encourage people, you know, call us. You can come to my office and you can watch what we do. We practice what we preach. I mean, it's a grind every day, but people come in, and when they come in, they've all done their portal, and we verified their benefits, and we know what it's going to cost, and we just walk them through this little thing. And I will tell you unequivocally, most of you dentists out there are understaffed. You know, and when you add dental sleep medicine to your practice, the best advice I can give you very simply is hire that, quote, sleep ambassador. Hire that person who's going to help you grow your sleep practice. Don't take everything that you have to do with sleep and dump it onto your staff who's there, because they're going to rebel.
Yep.
You know, so get a system, you know, work about it. You don't have to reinvent the wheel here. There are other people out here who've been doing this for a long time. Excuse me, and we can help you. So I hope you guys will certainly give the new Precision Herbst, the Prosomnus Herbst, a try out there. I think you'll be very pleased with the size of it and the ease of some of these things that we've talked about tonight. And I hope we pointed out that it's not exactly the same as the other ones out there, and that little things do make a difference. So we hope you give it a try.
Thank you, Richard. And I'm going to be back in a few weeks with Guy, and we're going to do one where we're going to talk about the 6 steps that will help increase your case acceptance in dental sleep medicine by up to 50%. And we've got some pretty good tips and tricks for getting more patients to say yes in dental sleep medicine. So we can look forward to doing that again too. So I'm looking forward to coming back.
Awesome. Okay. Excuse me. I think we've got everything there. There was something about telemedicine. You know, I think that Dr. Bowsis, that's something you're going to have to look up locally, you know, when you do that, unless you want to touch that one real quick, Mark, before we go.
What was that question again?
Just, you know, how are you using telemedicine? Who are you using? How are you doing that in your practice?
So Eddie Saul's licensed in several states, and so I can refer a patient to Eddie, and Eddie can get on the phone with them, do the same sort of sleep consult kind of that I would have done, but then he can order the sleep test, which I can't do for a Medicare patient, for example, or I could do for an AIM patient. There are certain regulations. So he would order the sleep test, and then I would still probably review the sleep test with the patient. But now we've got a physician a little bit more intimately involved, and instead of it just being a doc in the box somewhere else, which that's worked fine for me in the past too. You know, I've got about half my patients see a local physician here, and half my patients I work with sleeptest.com, and they've got a physician who's licensed in Michigan who reads and interprets my reports and takes care of all that. And Ryan and his team do an incredibly great job. And I use them for about 50%, but he can't do, for example, Medicare, because there's this face-to-face requirement going on. So that's perhaps bridged by this telemedicine concept. So we use it for that.
Okay. And I think we're going to see a little bit more of that, you know. I mean, we've got to learn to work much more closely with our physicians. And, you know, those of you who heard me talk all the time, I'm saying just pick up that dadgum phone and call them, man. You know, there's nothing wrong with calling a physician and doing that. I did a lunch and learn the other day, Mark, this is the last thing I say, and I'm going to go eat because I can smell that food in there. My wife's been cooking for the last hour. And he looked at me and I thought, man, is this guy going to hit me or what? And he said, you know what? He said, I just want to say thank you. He said, we just don't do this enough, do we? And I was like, do what? He goes, just talk amongst ourselves and educate ourselves so that together we can help our patients more. And I thought, wow, man, I sure wish I'd had that on video, you know, because it was pretty powerful moment when it happened. But, you know, take the time to go out there, make the phone calls, do that. You know, let's work with our patients and our physicians, and let's try to make the world a better place for everybody. So with that, Mark, I'm going to sign off. Thank you so much for putting all this together. I appreciate
thank you for having me,
much.
Richard. I appreciate it. Great program. Thanks, brother. Take care.
All right, guys.
Enjoy your dinner.
All right.